We'll begin with verse 3. We'll just cover verse 3 today, and then we'll cover the rest tomorrow. Ashrei, truly happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, in context, we need to remember that Yeshua is speaking directly to Jews about Jews. So he's speaking mostly to what we call the Am Haaretz, the people of the land, who were kind of a broad category of Jewish people dispersed outside of Jerusalem, in the Galilee. These were people who were abused and often very poor. They were policed by Rome and oppressed with impossible taxes. We think of Pontius Pilate, who is recorded as having mixed the blood of the Galilean Am Haaretz in with their sacrifices. He wasn't a nice guy. Further, we know from rabbinic texts that reflect back to first century political dynamics that there were groups of Jews in leadership in the temple who despised the Am Haaretz, not because they were poor per se, but because they lived a simpler Jewish life and often challenged some of the Pharisaic reformations that were promoted from Jerusalem. These reformations tended to give these leaders more authority and power and placed even heavier burdens on these Jewish people who were just trying to survive. For example, during a time of famine, one member of the religious elite in Jerusalem said, "Woe is me for giving my bread to an Am Haaretz." And again, speaking of the Am Haaretz, their poverty is a sign of pride. So when Yeshua says, Ashrei, the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, his immediate hearers would hear something remarkable, that God saw the Am Haaretz and that they had a very special place in his eyes. Now, the first century Judaism scene was very complex, and there were many different branches and sects, not just the elite in leadership. And there were many things that we read about the Am Haaretz that are also very positive. Yeshua was not creating new teachings for these Jews. He was pointing to the heart of what Judaism was really all about, pointing the way of the true Torah. Here's an example of how Judaism developed in the 3rd century. In Talmud, Joshua B. Levi said, "Come and see how great before God are those who are bowed down in spirit." Similar idea. And again in Talmud, we see those who suffer from poverty will not see the face of Gehenna. Gehenna is the same term that Yeshua uses for hell later in his Sermon on the Mount. It was a garbage dump in the 1st century, a place where corpses of criminals and dead animals and all kinds of manner of refuge were thrown to be destroyed and burned. So the valley was a burning place of sewage and burning flesh and garbage, and it made a great metaphor. Now, in fact, this passage even goes so far as to say that their poverty is what rescues them from the judgment of Gehenna. So this is inside of our tradition as well. Perhaps Yeshua is drawing straight from Isaiah 61. Here, Isaiah reflects on the Jubilee, and then remember, when he reads this in his home synagogue in Nazareth, he applies it to himself. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn. We know that Yeshua reads this passage in his hometown synagogue and applies it to himself. He is the one who comes to bring good news to the poor. And what is that good news? That they are Ashrei, because they are inheriting the kingdom of heaven. One clue to what Yeshua is saying here is the word itself. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew is setting up a contrast between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdoms of the earth. In the kingdoms of the earth, the strong and the wealthy and those who are held in high esteem have already been rewarded with power. This is their world. But for the poor, the beaten down, the bedraggled, those who have no place of joy in this world, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The idea isn't that the kingdom of heaven is like a pie in the sky kind of platitude. One day it will be better, but rather Yeshua is revealing an entirely different set of values and priorities to his disciples, to his hearers. Yeshua says in the disciples' prayer, "May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's not only a promise of eternal peace after death, it's like a prescription for a new set of glasses. Kingdom of heaven glasses, where Yeshua is inviting us to take off our earthly glasses that are colored with greed and pride and run by the power struggles and oppression of the world, and to replace them with heavenly glasses which see the world through heaven's eyes, to quote from the Prince of Egypt.